Let's go to 5 headlines. Before we get to the headlines here, the RNC is, we're talking about the RNC in just a second, but it's off to a pretty good start this week, blowing the DNC out of the water in almost every way, especially when it comes to ratings. In fact, reports of Monday night's C-SPAN viewership are 6 times the opening night of the DNC, which is pretty astounding. Not very surprising, though, given what I was forced to watch last week. I guess I'm not too surprised to see it. Daily Wire is matching this enthusiasm with an even better lineup of All Access Live to watch the RNC with you at dailywire.com. Starting today at 8:15 Eastern, 5:15 Pacific, I will be live streaming the entire night of RNC speakers and watching with you, taking your questions and your comments, and telling you authoritatively, not just what I think, but also what you should think about this. Don't think for yourself, okay? Let me do the thinking for you. Remember, I'm the theocratic fascist dictator. That's the way this is supposed to work. And we'll be hosting more live watch parties every day for the rest of the week. So don't miss out. All Access members get to join All Access live sessions where one of us hosts hop on every night to chat with you both in live stream and in the comments. So go to dailywire.com/Walsh right now to get 20% off All Access with coupon code ACCESS. dailywire.com/Walsh, coupon code ACCESS, 20% off. Go there now. Okay. So number one is day 2 of the RNC convention last night, as just mentioned. You won't be surprised to learn that my favorite moment was a speech not from a politician, because my theory that politicians never give interesting speeches ever has been, in my opinion, confirmed by both conventions. But luckily, there's been some non-political speeches that I thought were pretty good. Nick Sandmann, the kid who was slandered by CNN and other media companies and sued them and forced them to settle the lawsuits, he spoke for several minutes. He had a lot to say that was quite relevant and important, but I'm going to play just a clip of him giving his side of the story, describing from his perspective what happened on that fateful day in D.C. Watch this.
My name is Nick Sandmann, and I'm the teenager who was defamed by the media after an encounter with a group of protesters on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial last year. Before I begin, I'd like to thank President Trump for the opportunity to share some of my story and why it matters so much to this November's election. In 2019, I attended the March for Life in Washington, D.C., where I demonstrated in defense of the unborn. Later that day, I bought a Make America Great Again hat because our president, Donald Trump, has distinguished himself as one of the most pro-life presidents in the history of our country, and I wanted to express my support for him too. Looking back now, how could I have possibly imagined that the simple act of putting on that red hat would unleash hate from the left and make myself the target of network and cable news networks nationwide? Being from Kentucky, the birthplace of Abraham Lincoln, my classmates and I visited the Lincoln Memorial. I found myself face to face with Nathan Phillips and other professional protesters looking to turn me into the latest poster child showing why Trump is bad, while the media portrayed me as an aggressor with a relentless smirk on my face. In reality, the video confirms I was standing with my hands behind my back and an awkward smile on my face that hid 2 thoughts. 1, don't do anything that might further agitate the man banging a drum in my face. And 2, I was trying to follow a family friend's advice, never to do anything to embarrass your family, your school, or your community. Before I knew what was happening, it was over. One of Mr. Phillips' fellow agitators yelled out, "We got him. It's all right here on video. And we won, Grandpa."
So, and then he goes on to talk about cancel culture and how it's, wielded by the media and the left to destroy people they don't like. A very effective speech all around. I mean, this is a guy, you want to talk about victims of the cancel culture. This is one of the classic examples of it. A very, as I said, effective. And the best part is the media just absolutely hated it. This was playing on CNN, which is great. They were just really mad, salty, as the kids would say, and so they lashed out again, just spewing vitriol at this kid. Many examples I could show, but let's just go with this one. Joe Lockhart is a CNN contributor, and he is, I think, very jealous that Nick Sandmann gets paid more from CNN than he does. So he tweeted this I'm watching tonight because it's important, but I don't have to watch this snot-nosed, entitled kid from Kentucky, talking about Sandmann. Snot-nosed, entitled kid from Kentucky is what he calls him. Right, well, Joe, better to be a snot-nosed, entitled kid than a snot-nosed, entitled old fart like you. I mean, if you have to choose between the two, that's really the time to be snot-nosed and entitled as a kid. We all were. But, you're, in your 50s, 60s now, and you still are. And the thing is, yes, Nick is entitled. He actually is. Some people are entitled to certain things. He actually is entitled to not be slandered and libeled. Right? He's legally entitled to that. And so if he's coming off as entitled, that's because he has a certain entitlement, a real legal entitlement, that is protection from libel and slander, that was infringed. And that's why now CNN is entitled to pay him for that. That's how it works. Okay, number 2, big news here. New evidence was filed in the George Floyd case. It's a document from the Hennepin County medical examiner, Dr. Andrew Baker. And let me read this document to you in full. Here's what it says. It's a short document filed in court. It says, on May 31st, 2020 at 7:30 p.m., Assistant Hennepin County Attorney Patrick Lofton and I met with Dr. Andrew Baker on Microsoft Teams. All 3 of us were in different locations. Dr. Baker said that he had and recently received the final toxicology results from Mr. George Floyd's samples, which were analyzed by NMS Labs. AB shared his screen and showed us the results. He said that where it says hospital blood, those samples are from Mr. Floyd's hospital admissions and were not acquired as autopsy. AB said that these samples are better for determining actual blood toxicity than samples taken at the autopsy. Samples taken at autopsy may have undergone post-mortem distribution, whatever that means. AB walked us down the list of substances for which NMS Labs tested. Those values he highlighted were 4-ANPP, a precursor and metabolite of fentanyl present in Mr. Floyd's blood, methamphetamine, which he describes as very near the low end and a stimulant hard on the heart. Fentanyl, he said, that's pretty high. This level of fentanyl can cause pulmonary edema. Mr. Floyd's lungs were 2 to 3 times their normal weight at autopsy. That's a fatal level of fentanyl under normal circumstances. And then norfentanyl, a metabolite of fentanyl. Mr. Floyd's urine was tested for 4 things and are redundant. AB said that if Mr. Floyd had been found dead in his home or anywhere else, and there were no other contributing factors, he would conclude that it was an overdose death. Okay. So he had a level of fentanyl in the system that's fatal under normal circumstances. And under normal circumstances, he would have been ruled an overdose. These seem like important details. Now, you could say, well, this is not a normal circumstances. The arrest, the knee on the neck contributed to it. Yes, but it's hard to see how you sustain a murder charge when a person has potentially fatal levels of a toxin in their body, which they themselves willingly ingested. So more details in that case that are interesting. Number 3, the Indy Star reports 8 elementary school teachers who were shot with airsoft guns execution style during an active shooter training drill last year are suing the sheriff's department that conducted the training. The controversial training drill conducted at Meadowland Elementary School in northern Indiana last year became national news after teachers reported being left bruised, bloodied, and traumatized. The lawsuit filed last week in Indiana's Northern Federal Court claims that 4 White County Sheriff's deputies should subject the teachers to verbal threats, expletives, and screaming, in addition to being struck with plastic pellets fired from airsoft guns. The teachers displayed obvious signs of anguish and physical pain, but were humiliated to find the law enforcement officers joking and laughing at them. The complaint says the terrifying and inexplicable experience left the teachers with lasting physical and emotional injuries. Let's see, and then it goes on. A first grade teacher was diagnosed with PTSD after this. It continues, it says 8 teachers out of approximately 35 that were present have signed the lawsuit. According to the complaint, the teachers were broken up into small groups and told by sheriff's deputies to line up facing a wall and kneel. Once they were kneeling, an officer shot the teachers across the backs. Why? What was the point of this? They were not told to tell the other teacher. They were told not to tell the other teachers, waiting in another room for their turn. And later in the day, teachers were also subject to a series of drills in which they were instructed at different times to hide in classrooms, to try and barricade doors, and to throw tennis balls at the officers During each drill, officers shot the teachers with airsoft guns, according to the complaint. Then it goes on, physical and emotional injuries. According to the complaint, the teachers experienced several severe, well, it says several emotional distress. I'm pretty sure it means to say severe emotional distress. Okay, all right. Now, a few points here. Not to laugh at their emotional distress, which I am a little bit. This whole scene just seems completely outlandish. First of all, to say you have PTSD from being shot with a pellet gun is absurd. I'm sorry. I've been shot with a pellet gun in my day many times, and really doesn't hurt that much. And, you know, as long as you don't take a pellet to the eye or anything, and that could cause problems. So all of this whining about emotional distress is obviously ridiculous and just a bit of theater from teachers who are looking for a payday. Second, you know, and aside from all that, I've never quite understood, even if there is real emotional distress, how do you quantify that in terms of money? How do you put a certain dollar amount on emotional? Well, I have $50 million worth of emotional distress. I think $50 million would heal these my emotional problems. 40 million won't do it. You know, 55 million, I don't need, no, just right there at 50 million. That's what I need. I've looked within myself and realized that $50 million is what will heal me. That's never quite made sense to me. But second, these active shooter drills are also completely ridiculous. It just seems like a really macabre adult version of cops and robbers. It's fantasy role play in the guise of safety training is what it is. The whole thing is a waste of time and resources. You know, why do the teachers need to act out being executed? Like, what do you need practice for that? And why do the cops need practice doing it? That's a little bit disturbing too. So the whole thing is just is a waste. And the chances that a particular school will actually be the victim of a mass school shooting is so vanishingly small that you can't possibly justify the amount of time and energy and resources put into stuff like this. Even if, you know, these kinds of drills were effective, which I don't think they are at all. But now that doesn't mean that schools shouldn't have policies in place and ways to protect themselves. I'm just saying that acting out these role play games like they're at boot camp, you know, training to invade some Middle Eastern country or something is, I think, totally ludicrous. And besides, you know, you can give the instructions and tell people what to do without shooting them with airsoft guns. When you do a fire drill, you don't actually like burn people. You don't. When you do the fire drill, do you light candles and then chase the kids down the hallway and like start singeing their elbows while they're running? No. All you have to do is just tell them, okay, this is what we do. Here, in case this thing happens, probably won't happen, but if it does, this is what we do. Okay, thanks. Now I know. We can go about our day. And besides, the training goes out the window anyway once the bullets start flying. Most people who are not professional, you know, professional law enforcement, professional in the military, whatever, once the bullets fly, they're just going to panic anyway and do whatever seems the most appropriate in that situation. So even if the scenario you act out actually happens, your little staged production probably won't do any good. And really, when it comes down to it, if there's a shooter going around executing people room by room, you know, you can either try to get out of the building, or if you have a gun to protect yourselves, you can use that, which I think would be great if schools were able to actually protect themselves in that way. But if you're in the room and you have no gun and you haven't left and the shooter comes in and, you know, you're literally backed into a corner and he's the only one armed, I just don't know that there's any real strategy you can have in place that's going to prevent horrible things from happening. And certainly throwing tennis balls at him isn't going to do anything. Okay, let's go to number 4. Don Lemon of CNN is finally speaking out against the rioting. Only took him about 3 months, but finally he's finally realized that it's a problem. It's not a problem in the way that you probably think it's a problem. Listen to this.
I do think that what you said, what's happening in Kenosha is a Rorschach test for the entire country. And I think this is a blind spot for Democrats. I think Democrats are ignoring this problem or hoping that it will go away. And it's not going to go away. And so unless someone comes up with a solution over the next 73 days or 70, so however many days.
68 days.
68 days. So it's not going to, the problem is not going to be fixed by then. But what they can do, and I think maybe Joe Biden may be afraid to do it. I'm not sure. Maybe he won't. Maybe he is. He's got to address it. He's got to come out and talk about it. He's got to do a speech like Barack Obama did about race. He's got to come out and tell people that he is going to deal with the issue of police reform in this country, and that what's happening now is happening under Donald Trump's watch, and on Donald Trump's watch. And when he is the president, Kamala Harris is the vice president, then they will take care of this problem. But guess what? The rioting has to stop. Chris, as you know and I know, it's showing up in the polling. Mm-hmm. It's showing up in focus groups. It is the only thing right now that is sticking. And the Democrats tonight stuck with that, right? And they also stuck with the theme that you said, the coronavirus. You got coronavirus and you have Kenosha.
Okay, but you see the caveat there. He's speaking out because it hurts Democrats in the polls. That's what he's worried about. He's not worried about people's lives, livelihood, businesses being destroyed. He's worried about the polls, which doesn't surprise me, of course, but it is always interesting when they say that stuff out loud. Number 5, finally, what we've all been waiting for, really hoping for, Aaron Rodgers has chimed in about the shooting of Jacob Blake and, the social and cultural issues at play as well. And we can all see the matter, I think, more clearly now that the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers has expounded on the issue. So, as I said, we've all been waiting for this, and really glad that he's here to pass his wisdom along. Here's what he had to say.
I think, like I said in the video, and like we talked about in the video that we put out, there's a systemic problem, and until the problem is fixed, this is going to be an all too common sighting in this country. It's obviously hits home, being not far from Green Bay. I'm not going to, comment directly on the video until more facts come out. But, obviously it's something where you, as a non-police officer, I think a lot of us, the natural question is, when is lethal force necessary? And again, I think that goes to a systematic problem that needs to be addressed at some point. There's antiquated laws that, are prejudicial against people of color in this state. I think the governor and the folks, at the Capitol need to take a hard look at some of those systems that are in place.
Yeah, that has major hostage video vibes going on. All of these videos of these athletes, like Brett Favre and others, speaking about this, they all have hostage video vibes, but nothing quite like this. You can just imagine masked men with guns in the background whispering lines to him. Say systemic racism, say it. Rodgers he's just going through a list of buzzwords and phrases that he probably picked up when he scanned the BLM website right before going in for the press conference. And he's just sitting there like, the thing is, there's systemic underlying patriarchal cisgendered privilege, contributing to inequity and racial injustice. By the way, he says that antiquated laws have something to do with it. He mentions antiquated. That's another buzz phrase he picked up. The antiquated laws. There's antiquated. The laws are antiquated. Aaron, what does antiquated mean again? Well, it just means they're very just means they're antiquated. That's what it means. But what does that have to do with the Jacob Blake shooting? What antiquated laws are we talking about? The laws against sexual assault? That's why there was a warrant for his arrest. I just don't know what laws he's talking about here that have anything to do with it. Well, and he doesn't know either, of course. He's just babbling and hoping that it'll be enough to keep the mob from coming after him, and we'll see if it does. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.